with that, I have something I prepared, and you know, put the glasses on. So. I was a good friend of the Colonel. No, I'm going to read it. I want to thank you all for coming today. Not to mourn Ken's passing, but to celebrate his life. Kenneth Walter Labrador. Known to so many of us with respect and affection, simply as the Colonel. Referring to the Colonel as Ken is even stranger than me than calling Rex Chris. When a bunch of us got together a few weeks ago, soon after we got the terrible news, I told the story from many years ago when on a camping trip in upstate New York, the Colonel and I took a walk deep into the woods on a very dark night, guided only by a sliver of a moon, a failing flashlight, and the sound of a waterfall in the distance. We made our way through the woods, scrambled to the top of a rock ledge, and found the spot where the waterfall dumped into a small pool about 25 feet below. Fueled by youthful exuberance, cheap beer, and who remembers exactly what else, we agreed that it would be a good idea to jump from the rock ledge to the water below. So we put down the flashlight, took a few seconds to discuss how perfectly idiotic this was, and together we leapt into the black void. Seemed like time stood still as we plummeted to the wood. Thankfully, we missed the rocks, landed safely in the water, and eventually found our way back to our camp at we always looked at that moment as a metaphor for the leap you take when you know you've made some real and enduring connections. I don't think we ever expressed it in exactly those words, but we both knew it was the moment we developed an unbreakable bond and became brothers. Everyone here has taken that leap with him. Some of us in bigger ways than others, but we're all here because we had a connection to the Colonel that was very special. The Colonel was so many things. Imperfect as we all are, he was extremely fun, very funny, and sometimes quite by accident. He had a self-effacing way to him, was always quick with a playful verbal jab, and he developed keen appreciation for the bizarre and the absurd, hanging with the Scout Boys from better. How many people do you know who got married on April Fool's Day in the heart of the red light district in Amsterdam? With me as the minister. He was very often at the epicenter of the chaos at so many of our parties over the years. Just when the wheels were really falling off, you could count on the Colonel to be in the middle of it all with beer in his hand and his booming laugh. He didn't easily hide in the crowd, which wasn't always helpful, but it did solidify his unique standing as a friend. But he was much more than someone who was simply fun to be with. He was a husband to Lisa for 10 years, but they were together in love for many more than that. He had a soft spot for animals. He loved Reuben, Tiger, and Sheila. Despite some complicated family relationships, he tried hard to make it work, and I know it pained him deeply that it didn't always. He had a lot of friends, but most importantly, he had a close group of friends who became his family. And he continued to add to that group over the years. The Colonel had a great love for music, and especially for the music of the Grateful Dead. I was with him at his first show in Glens Falls. We had 10th row seats on the floor, but at some point during the second set, he wandered off, and when we saw him at the end of the show, you could see something had changed. Could have been that the estimated eyes, drums, not fade away, black Peter around and around, struck a nerve in a 19-year-old kid from Comac, but at that point seemed to have 5 cats fooled for the city. Permanently stuck in a big track. between. The dead, for many of us, were a unifying force, and we really did have some of the best times of our lives doing our thing before, during, and after those shows. The Colonel was a talented woodworker, a voracious reader at times in his life, and an avid fan of the Yankees and of the game of baseball itself. And as an example of how big-hearted he could be, despite bleeding Yankee blue, one of his best friends is, dare I say it, a Boston Red Sox fan. Believe me, that level of unconditional love lies in some points of safety. The Colonel, to his core, was a very real person. He had an amusing relationship with the English language. And he would at times make mincemeat of common phrases in the great tradition of split Mahoney in our time. But when it was pointed out that what he really meant to say was spur of the moment, when he said splurge of the second, nobody laughed harder than him. He was who he was, and he was fine with that. And that's a great quality. Despite being dealt some lousy cards at times in his life, and yes, I know as well as anyone that he dealt himself some of those cards. When I look around this room and see all the wonderful people who came out today, I can only come to one simple conclusion, that he had a great life because he spent it surrounded by people who loved him. I loved him, I'll miss him, and I'll always remember him as a trusted friend, a brother, and as a good man who strives to do the right thing in a world where that's not always easy. And I know he's looking down on us all right now, and he's saying, Wayneman, you're saying some nice things about the Colonel, so I don't have any problem with you speaking here, but it's going a little long, my friend. There's a room full of people here looking for a cold beer, so you're worried. Mr. Colonel Nostrovia, the life and beyond.
Cheers!